Hey there, and welcome to the Reclamation Room. I'm Ashana, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a space for women reclaiming themselves after narcissistic abuse. If you've ever felt like you were too much, not enough, or both at the same time, you're in the right place. I created this podcast because I know what it's like to lose yourself in overgiving, overperforming, and still wondering why it never felt like love. I've walked through trauma, toxic relationships, and the long road of self-reclamation, and I'm here to walk with you. In this podcast, we'll explore what it means to come home to yourself after the confusion and chaos of narcissistic abuse. Some episodes will be solo, others will include guest interviews. All of them will be honest, grounded, and deeply compassionate. So, whether you're just realizing what you've lived through, or you've been on this path and you're ready for the next layer of your healing, you are welcome here. This is not about perfection. This is about reclamation.
I would look at paintings and be like, oh my God, these paintings were telling me all along. They were telling me what was going on. I wasn't telling them, they were telling me. And so this painting or that painting was really about silence, suppression, violence, sexuality, shame, where and how we lose parts of ourselves, how we drop our identity, our heart, our being along the way, what we pick up to fill in the blanks when we gave away our power, what I filled it back up with in the most superficial way, like how these paintings were talking and just in the most powerful language for me.
Guys, this is Devorah Brinckerhoff. She's amazing. She's incredible. Listening to her has been like, I honestly feel like we could go on and on and on. You
We
said
could.
something a minute ago that I'm like, this could be a whole nother episode.
And we can do that too.
I hope that people find this resonant. I don't want to say useful because I kind of dislike putting that meaning to what we're doing here, but I do hope that it reaches the people that it's here to reach. And it reached me. So thank you. It touched my heart. So these generally, like my audience has given the best feedback on nothing formal. I mean, we are just two
Right.
people who wouldn't even know each other, right? And the reason I found you is the show that I do here is regarding narcissistic abuse, right? But that comes with betrayal trauma, complex trauma, like not trusting your inner intuition. I also do work in domestic violence, so I'm very much in that energy when I'm seeking guests. Your story really resonated.
So was it my story or was it the story of, I don't know where you found me?
I read a story of, and I don't know how personal you want to get on the show, but
Totally,
how,
I could do anything.
okay, so you and your husband
Hmm.
were sued by your parents. And I was like, holy shit. Okay. Like
Right.
this is my kind of person here. Like, you've seen some shit. And then I read what you do. And that was just it for me. Like, okay, I've got to get her on the show.
My goal, like I can sometimes, I'll just say, like, if I start going down a rabbit hole, try and bring me back because I will get lost in my own, like, whoo.
I love the rabbit holes. I have a theory or a philosophy that every human is here to bring their own specific brand of humanness, right? Like I talk about my third child a lot with this because he was the first one that really threw me for a loop because he was so different from me.
Yeah.
And I just say, like, he literally came to this earth to show people a different way to be. Okay. So if your story resonated with me on two different areas, right? So number one, I have been writing since I was 4 years old. I always said I wasn't creative, I wasn't an artist, but I could write. And I the worst times of my childhood and the worst times of my first marriage, that's what I turned to was the writing. And I thought it was I can't even put words to how beautiful it is what you're doing in your artistry here. So would you take a moment to just talk about like your work as an artist and where that came from and what it has done for you or others?
Well, that gives me chills to the question in and of itself. And It is definitely what it did for me. So you're speaking to that innate creative ability that I really believe is within all of us. We access it in different ways. So it's whatever works for you to help you connect with you, I think is creativity. So if writing did it for you, I'm so glad. Drawing and painting did it for me and still does to this day. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. It was just the place I was comfortable being alone with pen and paper. I didn't know that there was art school. I didn't know that I was neurodivergent. I didn't know that I was connecting to something bigger and greater than myself. And it saved my life so many times over. It acted as a release valve. So in the beginning, because not only was I like severely dyslexic, I couldn't read, I wasn't very good at writing. So what you do and what I do, I'm like, oh, words. It allowed me to sort of diffuse what I couldn't express. I was expressing it, but I wasn't expressing my story in words. I was expressing my story visually. And people in the early days, like, why don't you paint or draw something that's pretty or pleasing? And I'm like, because I don't feel pretty and I don't feel pleasing. And this is pretty to me. I loved it, but other people they were like, well, that looks like a dead body. And I'm like, well, sometimes I feel like a dead body, right? So it was just a very natural way for me to be in the world. And the people who did resonate and respond to my work really felt something come alive inside of them. And that to me is amazing as a way to connect with one another and to have really important conversations. It was a doorway to, if people would come to my studio, they would stay for hours talking about how it made people feel, and we would get into conversation about it, and that was just magical. So to me, that's where the power is, and I love it. It's not necessarily what it looks like, but it's what the process of creativity does for ourselves, and then how that can then intersect with other people's healing within them. And I don't know, you can't get anything better.
No, you can't. And this is so important for people to hear because as you were speaking, number one, I was like, they said what to you? Like the audacity. But I've had people say similar things to me in terms of a lot of stuff that you write is really negative and really dark. Like, are you sure you don't want to sugarcoat this a little bit? Like, maybe people don't want to read this. This is very triggering.
Yeah, it can be.
It can be, but the thing is, I don't really think I was writing for those people, you
No.
know? And it did start as art for myself, that outlet. That's what writing was for me. So I really resonate with what you just said. But I think there's probably so many people who have some form of outlet, and yet even that might feel like it's trying to be taken over or infiltrated or put into a box. And that's the thing about art and creativity is it takes away the need for boxes,
Yes,
right?
right. And it gets to it takes away the need for boxes. And when you're talking about sort of the gatekeepers of creativity, like plant your garden in this way and plant these flowers here, and instead of in the way that treat your elbow and not the whole body. So everything is very segregated and divided and separated. And when I was part of a team that was curating for a museum show for a local high school, they wanted a very specific look. And I always get the question, well, what is good art? And I'm like, anything that makes you feel something is good, because that is at the core. We need to feel more, and we're starved for it. We're starved. We have all this emotion. We have all of these things happening on the inside of us, but we are trained and conditioned to believe that it has to look a certain way in order to be palatable or acceptable. And I think these days people are really craving something that's more genuine and authentic. And that's one of the reasons why I was like, while that was the pinnacle to be in galleries and have formal representation, it felt meaningless to me when it ultimately was about making money or getting certain people in the door. And I love meeting people, even though I'm like an incredible introvert. I think it's great to meet people and see where we overlap. And it's sort of a self-filtering process, because who it doesn't resonate with, it just runs for the hills. So I'm like, great, that's fine.
Made my work easier. Now I have to talk to less people.
Exactly. Exactly. Just have those
Wow.
meaningful conversations that feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's everything. Like I really believe that a huge, people say like, "Oh my gosh, what is the meaning of all this?" Right? Like we're humans. We ask these things. That's not to say we have answers for them. But
Exactly.
I personally believe that a big reason is to have connection with one another, to express,
I
to
think
feel.
the only reason, right? First, the relationship with self, and then how can we sort of soften our heart and open our arms and connect with those around us in a way that uplifts rather than takes us down. And I think
Mm.
that that's what's happening in the world today. Like everything is crumbling, and then those of us who are ready to hold it and to hold something that is more loving and more open for others to step into that part of themselves.
Yeah, and a huge part of that is saying, look, you can sit here even if it's messy and even if it's ugly, because we do ugly around here too. Your ugly might be my beautiful, and hey.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, this is so awesome. I'm excited for people to hear this. Are you okay with also digging into your personal story and
Yeah,
well, what came first, the love for art or the trauma that you endured?
that's a great question. Art or trauma? So my uh, I believe that I was sexually abused as an infant, as a very, very young baby. I have no memory whatsoever. I have body memory, and it all came to the surface when I got pregnant for the first time at the age of 32. So until that point, I believed, while I was a tragically unhappy teenager and young adult. Actually, I got really depressed as young as 8 when I was like, what the, can we swear on this show? I was
Yep.
just,
Yep, you're good.
what the motherfuck is this about? I was just so unhappy. Um, and I started to realize that I didn't quite belong in the family that I was my family. And yet I love them dearly and loved them then and now, although it's been a pretty rocky road. Um, so I really didn't know. I thought my parents stayed together. They're still together. They love each other very much. So I felt really blessed growing up, and I absolutely hated myself. I remember walking home as a little first grader with my brother and saying to him, like, I think I've got a rotten apple inside of me, and I don't know why, and what can I do? I know. He's 2 years older than me, and just was sort of my protector, and we were really good friends, and I trusted him. And he's so I just didn't know, but something was off, and
Mhm.
art was always there. So I spent a lot of time alone as a child. Both of my parents were very busy. We all were alone, and we sort of scattered into the woods of rural Vermont. And I love that too, right? It was a wonderful relationship with nature, and I absolutely 100% had and still do have the belief that everything was alive around me and connected. Trees were my family, rocks were my siblings, and the ferns and fiddleheads and caterpillars were like my playmates. And so I lived in that world, and also drawing, but I couldn't read. Like I absolutely couldn't read. Both of my parents are PhDs, very academic. My mother's a scientist. My father was he's a philosopher. He had a doctorate in philosophy. So there was a very academic, my grandfather was a doctor. Everyone was a doctor, and an MD. And I was like, oh shit.
What am I gonna do?
I'm gonna do, like, I can't, I hate math. So I just I was weird, and I still am. And now I appreciate it. I did not appreciate it then, but I do now. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I don't even know anymore because I'm listening to you and I'm like, number one, same, down to like, I would go and pretend that like the moss covered areas were like fairy houses.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would create currency out of like leaves and twigs for my little siblings. And I would be like, this is our magical place, right? Like anything can happen here.
No.
And I'm listening to you and the comment about bad apple and your brother. My brother's 2 years older than me. And I remember having the same feelings, and I'm like, gosh, my heart goes out to you because
Yeah.
I can relate.
And today with all the young people and who just don't know, and I just want them to have the support that they need to know that they're okay and worthy, right? We come in worthy, we stay worthy. It's our mind that changes about our worthiness. And I thought I was going to hell. Luckily, I wasn't raised with any organized religion whatsoever. It was sort of the opposite, where if there was any, so I love the idea of witches. I wanted a coven. I was like, where are my people? And my parents were like, you're crazy. And I, well, do you think the Pope is crazy? And they're like, yeah, he's crazy. He's not an intelligent human. I'm like, what? So, right, there was this anti-religion, so much so that the word spirituality feels like a bad word. And I'm like, well, I'm not a spiritual person. And it turns out that I am, but just not in any kind of concrete way. Like the bypassing that happens, like I'm not interested in any of that. I don't know what it means to be enlightened. I know what it means to be self-connected and self-sourced, and to keep our heart as open as possible. This world throws us a lot of curveballs and walls,
Yeah, yep. And then we build walls
and we build walls.
ourselves. Yep.
Absolutely do. Stay protected, all the I was like, right? So coping skills, I'm like, those things are awesome. As much as they caused me harm, they also kept me alive. So
Yeah,
I'm not going to badmouth any of them. And they
yeah.
can cause a lot of harm. So
I had a conversation recently. I don't even remember who it was with, but these kinds of conversations are normal to me, right? Like this is it for me. And it's just this thought of like the grieving of what you go through and the parts of yourself that weren't quite what you wanted to be in that moment. And and people that you love, they take that personally too. And so you might lose relationships, lose friendships, let people down, like be embarrassed years later when you think back on what you did. And it's like it's so painful. But I really can't go back and change any of that because I wouldn't be who I am right now. And so it comes to this piece of like, oh, I love you.
right.
Oh my gosh. Like all that you did, you're so beautiful and magnificent. And I've always thought that about other people.
Mhm.
I never thought that about myself until recently. So I feel like you kind of have a similar view on what you've been through and who you've been.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still struggle sometimes where that critical mind can get in there and sabotage that kindness and compassion that I've spent a lifetime learning how to have. So I think it's very human to lose sight of it and to come back. And the idea that that's just part of it too, the ebb and flow of our own self-love. And I'm so glad that you have fallen in love with yourself. It sounds like you've had an incredible journey.
Okay, quick questions here, literally just for fun. No right or wrong answers. Would you say you're type A or type B?
Oh God, a little bit of both. I yeah, I can be very type A about certain things. That's only gotten worse as I've gotten older. I would never have thought I was type A. And then now I'm also like, when it comes to uh non-judgment, which I think is a very type B, that is, I don't, again, for other people, and especially when raising children, I was like, drugs, sex, alcohol, all of that is a natural, like it's going to come up naturally. It's going to be a little different for each of you than quote unquote whatever normal is. But there's nothing wrong. Like I no judgment around what your experiences are, what your choices are. Please don't die. Please
Right?
please don't make a choice that could actually take you
Have
away.
you not here? Yeah.
That would break my heart, and I will really be devastated. So
Yeah,
don't.
I can handle a lot of things, but I
Right.
don't want to have to handle
I
losing.
don't want to have to handle that. Still I'm often like, wow, when is the universe going to stop throwing things at me? But it just doesn't. It doesn't. And so how can I meet them with more grace and more type
Mhm.
than type A? How can I move into acceptance rather than resistance, and allowing rather than um denying?
Yeah. Okay. One more.
Uh-huh.
Do you know your big three, your astrological signs?
No, but I would love to find out. Do you do that?
I not by any means professionally. My best friend is way better at this than me. She'll send me things all the time and I'm just like, son of a bitch. Like that explains so much. But I know that I'm a Scorpio. Like my like main sign that everyone knows my sun sign is Scorpio, which is like dark, mysterious, moody, passionate. But I'm a Leo moon.
Uh-huh.
So that's like what you secretly are that maybe people don't see about you. And I'm like, that's not a good one. I don't want to be that.
I don't know what it means.
Um, well, so from what I've gathered, Leos come across as very self-centered, but I think they really want to be like very helpful and very like important, you know? And then my rising is Libra, which is what people see me as, which is very like balanced, intuitive, mature, wise, like taking in both sides of things.
Naturally.
Um, yeah. So do you know you're like one big, like your sun sign?
I'm a Cancer. I'm right at the end of Cancer. I'm right on the cusp. I'm very much a Cancer. I get my feelings hurt extremely easily, and I retreat very quickly.
Mm.
I'm tentative about putting myself out there. I've gotten much better at that. But yeah, I'm curious about all of that. I was listening to a podcast where somebody was so skilled in that area. I'm like, oh, I could really spend like months looking into this.
For
So,
sure.
and it's very cool. And I 100% like all of that stuff. I just think it's so neat.
If you like that, you might also like human design.
I probably would. It's on my periphery, but
Hmm.
I don't know enough about it, right? Especially with 5 children.
I
Um,
know.
with
It's
a
like a guilty pleasure.
right, with a 2-year-old, right? You stay in your bed as long as possible, looking things up on your phone. I do that too. I'm like, I'm working here.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. If someone cancels a podcast episode, my husband will still keep the kids and it'll just be like my bonus hour. And I'm like, oh,
So
the
nice.
gods have smiled upon me today.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. We learned about how you felt as if there were a bad apple inside of you,
Mhm.
and art was always there.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if we can kind of catch the listeners or the viewers up to what did happen regarding your children and your parents and your big tipping point, we'll say.
So I had the journey around understanding sexual abuse started when I was pregnant and with my first child, and I have three. And so I went into therapy. And what's interesting is that during college, there was one moment in high school, several moments in college where I started wondering about sexual abuse. And I actually had other therapists and brought it up. And they were like, oh, no, no, that didn't happen. And
Did you
so,
have symptoms that like made you think maybe, or not, maybe not symptoms, maybe like experiences?
well, I just think behavior, right? I was so weird around sexuality. And while I wanted a boyfriend, I wouldn't engage with one. Or if I had a boyfriend, I would be on automatic pilot. I couldn't show up physically. I was sort of a floating head. And I was just naive about everything. And I had so much shame when it came to sexuality. And so I really didn't understand that. I
Hmm.
just thought I was so strange. Or just I was never going to have the experiences that other people talk about in terms of falling in love or having great sex or whatever. I had terrible sex and I was vacant during
Yep.
these kinds of encounters. Um, and so that I was like, what is the reason for this? I wanted to understand what a possible reason was. And that was something that I thought maybe. But when somebody was like, no, that didn't happen, for you.
Mhm.
Like, that's not possible. Then I was like, oh, okay, you said it's not possible. So I'll take you for your word,
Mhm.
defer to your expertise. And so I didn't investigate it. So my husband, I met him when I was 25, and I had never been seen by another human the way he saw me. And it was awesome and amazing. And we dated and lived together for 5 years before we got married, and another 2 years before 2.5 years before we had a child. And getting pregnant really threw us for a loop. Moving to be near his family also threw our relationship into a little bit of a tailspin. And so there were challenges within our relationship during those two moments or experiences or events, however you want to say it. Once I got pregnant and I delivered this beautiful baby, and I was in heaven for 7 months. And then things started to be like, huh, I thought this would be the end all be all for me, is to be a stay-at-home mother. My mother was not a stay-at-home mother. I decided that if I was going to choose to have children, I was definitely going to raise them. And I wasn't going to do it the way my parents had raised me. But that started to really crumble. I was pretty bored. I was like, I can't read this book another time. And yet it's like having your heart on your sleeve, and it's a different kind of love. This is a good point. So when my daughter was born, I wouldn't let anybody else hold her, including my husband, which I was like, men are dangerous. So when I was in college, I worked at a, a, a home for newborn infants that were drug addicted and HIV positive. Their mothers lived upstairs. I almost adopted one of those babies. And uh, and my life would have been very different. But I didn't, and I didn't at the last minute. I was about one level before official adoption when I made a mistake on one of the forms and wrote my mother's name down instead of my own. And I was like, oh, fuck. I'm not ready for this. And so sort of backtracked and then left the country. So
Wow.
I know.
Side quest.
All right. So, and I ended up living in Prague and really meeting the edge of myself there. Like I had stopped painting for years at that point, because I was like, well, what's the point? The world is filled with all of this pain and sorrow. How can I possibly, what's the point of beauty? What's the point of something so frivolous? And but while I was there, I started painting again, and I got back on my feet within myself. I was really like, oh, if I'm going to live, I need to really change the way I'm living. And so that was one of the first steps. And then I met my husband shortly after I came home. So in that time, right after she was born, she slept with me sort of in my armpit for the first, 2 years of her life. But I slowly left, quote unquote, the marital bed and just brought her with me because I felt like she was unsafe, and particularly at night. And I was like, I had all this magical thinking. And so even though I started having this sort of panic attack thing while I was pregnant, and then the whole reason why I told you, I hope you can put this together. This is what I mean. So the whole reason I brought up the time in college is that there were fathers to these babies and young children, and I would not let them see their children. They would come in, and I was the gatekeeper, and I was like, no, you can't come in. And I don't know what the hell that was, other than men are unsafe, and I don't trust you to be gentle with your children or your women who are upstairs for a reason. And so this back in the head kind of instinct to stay away from men had always been with me. And being afraid of authority, male figures, that's very common. So it was hard to tease out that there was something bigger going on until I had my own child and kept her away from my husband, who was and still is my best friend. So I went crazy a little bit in this kind of very instinctual protection around her. And I was precious around her sleep. I was, talk about type A. I became like a crazy controlling person around her safety. So she started to show some weird behavior as a 3-year-old. And we were having a second child and brought her into therapy, who said that was showing some signs of sexual abuse. And I was like, nah, no way.
There's
I'm
no
with
way.
you.
Yeah.
I can't handle this. It didn't happen.
Yep.
I don't know how to process this. So we kept her in therapy to prepare her, quote unquote, to have to have a sibling, but I didn't touch that. And the therapist was like, huh, have you been sexually abused? And I was like, what makes you say that? And she's like, well, the way you're reacting to this possibility, and I'd really love to support you with this, which started me down a 10-year journey of my own self-discovery around sexual abuse. And while with her, she was an amazing, amazing therapist. I mean, it was an intense 10 years. I was going to group every week, seeing her individually. And then when my son was about 18 months old, he started acting really, really weird. And I pulled him out of preschool, and brought him to my therapist because I was getting reports with other caregivers who said, I transferred him to a different preschool that was like 2 hours twice a week, and they were wonderful. And they would, but it's still a preschool, and they had fire alarms, and he would drop. He would freeze and drop to the ground and just like into the fetal position and refuse to move. And they were like, "This is really weird." And then he started. He was really early to potty train, but then he wanted to wear diapers, and then again, and then with diapers, he wanted to wear more and more layers of clothing. And it was Utah heat. It's like 9 billion degrees in the summer. And he just was walking around like this little Michelin boy, could barely move, but felt safer. And so we started bringing him to therapy, and he started this long process himself of unraveling sexual abuse that was really, really clear. So while our daughter could suppress it and my own denial of it, my son could not. And it could be that his abuse had escalated to the place that he couldn't suppress it. And I'm so grateful that he couldn't, because it just opened this huge can of worms in the family. So we moved close to my husband's family. We were living in Seattle, Washington, actually. And after we got married and decided that we wanted to try to have children, we wanted to have a support network. And instead of moving back to Vermont, we moved to Utah. And my husband entered into a psychology program there, and I continued with my work. So as my son we started working through this. We didn't tell anyone in the family. And it gets a little confusing because they're working through their I brought my daughter back into therapy. For anybody who is worried, she went immediately back into therapy. So the three of us were all working on our separate journeys. And then my therapist was coaching me on how to support them through theirs. And one time when I was in therapy, I was reading this really beautiful letter from my father. And I was like, oh my God, it's him. He's the one. And I just was really, it was just this feeling that came over me. And it wasn't anger, it wasn't fear, it was just a really quiet knowing, like, this is who it is. And then I'm like, fuck, what do I do? Like, I don't know what to do with this information. And so obviously shared it with my husband and his family because they were a huge part of our lives. They loved our children. They were so good with them. We had date night every Wednesday where my kids would go over to their Nana and Papa's house. And it was we had weekend plans. We just did all these wonderful things all the time. We went on vacation together. And one vacation, while we're in this whole thing, their step uncle shows up and my son's behavior just skyrocketed. So as he got safer and safer, expressing what had happened to his body. So his therapist came out one day and was like, you won't believe what he did. It's just amazing. He had such a huge breakthrough. And she's like, I'd love to show you. So she brings me back to the room and there's these life size for a child. So small, but life size styrofoam child dolls that he had duct taped the arms to the sides of this doll, stabbed the mouth, genitals, anal area, and all three areas, and poured red and blue paint all over them. And I was like, I burst into tears. I was just like, I could not believe that he was expressing what he had experienced. And she's like, isn't it great? And I'm like, horrified. No, this is like the worst thing I'd ever seen. And as I sort of came back to myself, I realized he is getting to do what I never got to do. Like he is getting this out of his body. He has witnesses and support and holding and love to know that his value isn't changing. And even though he had trouble, like those little details around clothing, but also bathing. He was obsessed with cleaning his body and vigorously and violently cleaning himself in ways that you just never want to see your child exhibit. And I was so grateful that I had a therapist to say he can wash himself as many times as he needs to, and you can guide him to be gentle, but you can never do this for him. You can't wash him. You can't dry him. You can't lotion him. He needs to be in charge of his body. So, that trip, that vacation we went on, and his behavior escalated. He was inconsolable while his step-uncle was there, and the behavior around bathing was nonstop. Like we couldn't go anywhere. He'd be screaming all night long. He was 3.5 at this time, 3.5, young. So we'd been working, let's see, 18 months is a year and a half, 2.5, 3.5, for 2 years on who this was, what was going on, how to support him. And during this, and then the step uncle left and the behavior calmed. And I was like, well, we've been wondering who it is. We've been wondering what's going on. And there's our answer. And so it was a really long drive there and back. So on the 17-hour drive back, my husband and I were like, well, we can't unknow this information. And we can't pretend that it isn't true. And we need at some point to say something, because I will not pretend that it didn't happen or isn't happening. And I won't let my children go over there anymore if he's there. So months later, well, it was actually 3 or 4 weeks later, we went to a barbecue. We actually hadn't said anything because we were terrified of what the fallout would be. We hadn't said anything, and we went to a barbecue and he showed up, and my son just stood in front of him and stared at him, just stock still, stared at him in the eyes, and lost control of his bowels, just feces running down his legs. And this had been happening more and more. He had started feeling more and more uncomfortable going over to his grandparents' house, and I had started packing extra underwear, and he refused to let his grandmother take care of him, clean him up, help him in the bathroom in any way. And so they had called me multiple times when he was over there still visiting, because the person that we had come to know who had caused harm he wasn't there, but it had happened there at that house. And so I didn't know that at the time. And so I scooped him up. I said, I'm going home. I'm taking him with me. And I just left the barbecue. And then a week later, my husband went to meet his father and tell him what had happened. And that night and that conversation, the initial conversation went really well. He's like, yeah, that actually makes sense. I understand. We'll get him help. Thank you for telling me. And he went home. He talked to his wife, which is my husband's stepmother, and the shit hit the fan. We don't know exactly what happened. We just know that within 24 hours, my father-in-law had called every single person that we knew, told them that not us, but I had made up horrible, horrible things, and that they needed to cut us out of their lives. And so we lost brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and cousins and parents. He called my father and said, you don't know this, but your daughter, I guess it would have been 4 years ago, told me that you had sexually abused her, and she's telling all of these lies about you, and we want you to join a lawsuit against them. And so that is what they did. And we didn't know about it. I had this weird feeling and that something had happened. I'm like, oh, my father-in-law told my father. And about 2 weeks later, we got a knock on the door and we were served legal papers for grandparent rights. And a little bit after that, I received a letter of excommunication from my family saying that they never wanted to see me again. And this was right before the holidays. And I was just like, I can't even tell you the level of heartbreak and devastation that I felt. And I often wonder what would have happened if, when I had that moment on the couch in the therapy office, when I realized that it was my father, if I had flown home and said, hey, this is what I've come to. I don't know if it's true. I don't have any memories. I don't have any desire to accuse you of anything. This is just what happened for me. You don't have to agree. You don't have to believe. I just wanted you to know. But I didn't do that. And part of me regrets not doing that. I was just terrified. My father is a very wonderful, complicated man, and it absolutely broke his heart to learn that I had made that accusation and to learn about it in the way that he did. So there's the betrayal, like rock bottom. And he never called me. He didn't ask me to say, is this true? Your husband's father just called me and I wanted to talk to you about what he told me. That was not something that he did. And I didn't know why. I was very hurt by that. And I can imagine it was a horrible, horrible, horrible thing to hear, and to hear it so many years after the fact. That was my betrayal. He felt betrayed. So what a mess. What a mess it was.
Yeah. And just hearing you say, like, if it had gone differently on the couch in therapy that day, and if I had reached out to him, and please don't think that I'm talking about just you right now, because if this
Right.
doesn't resonate for you, it doesn't resonate. But I can connect with my listeners right now, and I hear something similar that I did also. So I'll just share from my perspective
Yeah.
the times that I went back in my head and thought, maybe if I hadn't told people about how he treated me, maybe if I hadn't shared so publicly on social media about what he put me through, maybe if I hadn't named names and made it so obvious who I was talking about, then maybe I would still have placement of all of my children right now. And I also volunteer with Break the Silence Alabama, which is advocacy against domestic violence. And I feel like it's a common experience to want to go back and think, what could I have done differently that might have had this turn out differently?
Yeah.
And I hear you love your father. And I'm wondering, like, I'm putting myself in that position of if you had done it differently. And I'm wondering, like, what might have changed about the overall situation in a big way.
Probably nothing. I think my sense of self-integrity would have would have, because, and I agree with you, I hear what you're saying, and in no way, shape, or form do I ever, 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 ever blame the victim, ever. And nor do I condone that kind of violence or behavior or incredible harm, like incredible harm that was received to a very, very teeny tiny being that I was. It's complicated, and those relationships are so complicated because I know that he received harm, and it doesn't excuse the way he chose to dispel it. I made a different choice with my children. I could have denied it. I could have ignored it, and I couldn't. There was no part of me that ever wanted to repeat the cycle. And it is that that backbone of I can't tolerate any more suffering, especially at my own hands. And I know that I hurt him, and that it's easy for me to get into a place that wishes I could have done this in a way that didn't harm others, but it did. And I chose myself. It took me a while to realize that to get angry. I was so hurt. It took me a while to get angry. And I did a similar thing in 2018-19. I started very publicly on social media, really telling my story. And because my husband had given me like a 90-day challenge to talk about my work. And in doing so, I would look at paintings and be like, oh my God, these paintings were telling me all along. They were telling me what was going on. I wasn't telling them, they were telling me. And so this painting or that painting was really about silence, suppression, violence, sexuality, shame, where and how we lose parts of ourselves, how we drop our identity, our heart, our being along the way, what we pick up to fill in the blanks that we, when we gave away our power, what I filled it back up with in the most superficial way, like how these paintings were talking and just in the most powerful language for me. And so really they became, that social media stopped being about like, this painting is about yada yada, and this color, it was like, oh, holy shit, this painting is about sexual abuse, and this is why, and this is how, and this painting with scissors, and scissors were a part of my work for a long time. And I would put scissors in there as though I was doing a painting about cutting my husband's hair, and it would be this like picture of domestic connection, but really it had a double meaning, and I always knew what the double meaning was. And so while I painted a very different way, very different than I had ever painted before or after having young children, during that time of having young children, they were very feminine, very like little pointy breasts with high heels and purses and sharp knives and scissors. And so there could be like this birthday cake, because I love to bake, that was like 7 stories high, with this woman with a scowl on her face and an apron with the tools of destruction to cut a cake. And it was always very clear to my body that I was expressing like, it looks good, but there's some shit going on underneath the surface that I am addressing for myself, that nobody else needs to know about, but I am constantly, honestly assessing my own lived experience in the creative process. And it saved me over and over again, which is what brought me to creating soul portraits. And I know I can't save my father, and I know that we will always disagree, and we don't talk about it. And I needed to forgive myself, and I worked really hard to find self-forgiveness first for the ways in which I felt like I had caused so much harm. So to go back to those fathers that I didn't let see their children, they had every right to see their children. And I was not in any position to bar them from that. And so those it's not micro to them or me, because I had a lot of trouble forgiving myself for that. And the many, that's just one example. Like I stole everything. I lied all the time. I was a master manipulator unconsciously, but still, nonetheless, it has an impact on other people. And it was very, very hard for me to forgive myself.
Yeah. I honestly, I love that you leaned into the question the way that you did because and this is just how I operate, right? Like there was no right or wrong answer and there's no judgment on how you chose to do it. And I think it's so valuable that people hear other versions and other ways and you know what you shared was beautiful and I know that someone needs to hear that. So I just appreciate that you are willing to go there to that place and not think that I was like, you
Oh
know,
no.
judging you for your portion.
No, no, not at all. And you know, I really wanted to help other people in this position. I became a victim offender mediator. I went and got trained. And then you're still in a system that doesn't hold space for real conversations. So that didn't last for very long. And I realized that I needed to stay with who, like true to who I really am in the creative space. But for those people who have really received, and I sat in rooms where, especially in Utah, I mean, there's not only one of the highest rates of sexual abuse within the Mormon church, fundamentalist Mormon sects that are very much alive. And so sitting in rooms with people who had been so devastatingly harmed by others, like just really brutally harmed. I would never, ever, and they're like, I'll never forgive them ever. And I'm like, and you do not have to, like, at all. That is not a requirement. For me, it was really learning how to forgive myself. And I still question whether or not forgiveness in this human form is even real or a possibility. What I know is that I suffer much less than I used to suffer inside my own mind.
I wonder if some part of that forgiveness journey of self is related to just like letting go of some of that shame. Maybe that there's a part of it that there's no action to forgive yourself for. Maybe it's just that internal, like the bad apple, like you said.
Right. Yeah. And ultimately, like, I don't think I did anything wrong. I think all of it as a coping skill,
Mhm.
different skills along the ways that thankfully have changed from being so destructive to less destructive, but still occasionally destructive, because that's just also can exist. And I don't judge that either. Like the ways in which we hold ourselves to the best of our ability is all we can ever ask for. So I think that when people meet with me, I hope that they don't feel any judgment. I just don't have any.
I definitely don't feel any. I thought it was beautiful the way you shared about your father. And I don't know, there's something very human in that.
Well, you can love people that have really, really hurt you. We are not all good and all bad. We are so complex, and our judicial system wants it to be very straight and narrow, and they want the evildoers to look evil and behave only evilly, and it just isn't true. Lucifer was an angel, right? And we've demonized our shadow, and it crippled me to hide that shadow. And so my work is all about not hiding.
Well, let's see. Do you want to kind of segue into what your work is, your business?
Whatever you want, wherever your heart and interest takes you, I will follow you there.
I think this is a good time to because you've shared like your early experience. You've shared like the big dark pieces of like, oh my gosh, I thought this was,
It,
awful.
it was awful.
Yeah, like, well, obviously it was awful. How I thought this was like going to end me. I'm assuming at some point you probably felt that, right?
Oh, immediately just didn't know
Yeah.
how I was going to come back from it. I didn't know how
Yeah.
it was ever, and it took a very, very long time. You know, our world got extremely small overnight.
Quickly, yeah.
Yeah, we were part of this enormous extended family with so much going on to the five of us, and we became insular. And I'd never had a Thanksgiving by myself. I had cooked Thanksgiving dinner for many, 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 many people. But I'd never been a part of that for just the five of us. And I felt very empty, and I did not believe that I would ever recover. And whew, it was, yeah, I hate it. I really do hate it when people say, oh, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I will say that I never would have discovered who I am without losing everything I thought I needed. And that was it. And I chose myself, right? I wouldn't back down. They wanted me to say it wasn't true. I couldn't. They wanted me to say that I don't believe it anymore. I couldn't. There was sort of a, we want you back in our lives if, and I was like, I will come back, but no. And so I did come back, and then I was like, what am I doing? Like, why would I be with people that don't accept the belief that I have for me? Like, they don't have to believe it, but they have to accept that I believe it. And that was my line. Like, I believe it. You don't have to believe it, but you have to believe that I do. And you have to respect that I do. And if you can't do that, then I don't know how to have a relationship with that. I don't know how to have a relationship with anyone who doesn't respect who I know myself to be. Like, I get to know who I am. You don't have to know me. That's okay. But I get to. So that was my one boundary. And it's gotten stronger and bigger and longer since then. But
That's a big piece. Like, I'm just imagining having relationship with someone who you don't have to believe it happened, but isn't it enough to know that I believe that it happened? Can you hold space for that for me? And
yes,
these are people that it wouldn't be like, quote, an outside job, like it's very close to home.
it
And
is.
so what, that had to have been difficult for everyone.
It was excruciating for everyone. And I did not, so in my studio, again, with all of those papers, right? Love and hate letters from my childhood, my parents, wonderful cards from both of my parents and letters. My father doesn't really write cards, but he did write me that one letter. And then I had all of these legal papers and a letter of excommunication, and I was officially written out of the will and all of this stuff. Like, I kept getting all of this legal documentation and emails. And I remember, my sister-in-law called me up and she's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, they sued me. What are you talking about? And she's like, no, they didn't. What are you talking about? And right, you're like, huh, what? And it took me a long time to figure out that they didn't tell anyone that they actually sued me. Like, that was another thing that just wasn't talked about. And I'm like, oh, so not only does the family think I'm crazy, like they really think I'm crazy because you haven't told them what you actually did. And so I had been in the victim mentality most of my life, like really truly searching for a rescuer. And when I lost everything, I was like, well, I thought I was rescuing myself all those years ago on a curb in Prague, but now I'm really rescuing myself. Like, I really have to deal with myself. And so in my studio, I was just going through this box of things, like a card from college and all these nice letters and photographs, and just like, who am I? And what is my relationship to these people that I have loved and felt loved by? And what is love, and what is connection, and what is belonging, and what is integrity, and what is truth, and what is denial? And I was rereading and revisiting, and I just started ripping things up and in like this intuitive way. And I just immediately started gluing them down onto a canvas. And I was writing over them, and I was like deep in. Hours had gone by, hours and hours of just like, there was paper everywhere and glue and paint and charcoal dust and just everything. And I stood back and I'm like, oh my God, like, whew, what is happening here? And I had this realization that I had just disassembled my whole narrative, and I was reassembling it all ripped up in a different way. I had made it digestible. I had I had figured out how to move through all of this trauma and stuck energy and deep, deep, painful emotions that I could barely tolerate reading, let alone like feeling. I was so scared of that box of materials, and I had just like in a matter of 5 hours moved it all out of my body. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like I feel lighter. I don't know what just happened, but all of this energy just like left. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this from now on. And now I incorporate that process whenever I have anything that I need to move without thinking, right? It bypasses our thinking mind, and it just goes to this place where you tap into your own internal wisdom and let it do the work for you. Let your materials tell your story for you. You don't have to relive it. You can. A lot of people do, but it's in this, like you said, sort of this witnessing and holding of something that we don't typically give ourselves the time and space to do. And it just changed everything. It absolutely changed my life. It was amazing. Still is.
This is so cool to me because like I told you, like I didn't think of myself as like an artistic person in that way. So when I listen to someone who does art, like, not writing, obviously writing, I understand, but like visual art, they're like, and you're not thinking in your brain and you just do it. And I'm just like, you do what? Like, what do you do? Can you tell me how? What's
Yeah,
step one?
I can do
Okay.
that. Of course. That's the whole thing because it's the process. It's the process. It's absolutely not the product. It just happens that I had some natural skill and could
Okay.
go to art school, but it's never been about the product, which is why people are like, it's so ugly. Why did you make that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
because it feels good,
Because
because
I fucking wanted to.
yeah, because it's fun to create. It's fun to garden. It's fun to move your body. It's fun to cook. It's fun to write. It's fun to dance. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to like be and smell blue spruce trees. Like it's fun to connect at that deeper sort of somatic level. Like it feels good. And so anybody, if you have hands that work and a willingness to rip up paper, and it doesn't have to be the original, it can be copies. You can rip up anything and you can glue anything down. And if you have that willingness, you can do this process. So working hands and willingness is what I say. And that's all you need.
So
If
cool.
you're drawn to it, that's it.
Yeah.
And so like since that day in the studio and since I've moved through so much of my own stuff, I've loved working with other people and especially those people who have really painful experiences that are hard to touch. So suicide of a spouse or child, war veterans, death of any kind, really
Mhm.
grief and loss, right? Domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual abuse, like all of those extraordinarily unspoken about, marginalized, under the rug topics that no one wants to make room for and talk about. They're my favorite thing to make room and talk about. Or if not talk about, make space so that you can be with it. You don't have to speak out loud. You don't have to tell anyone else. And you can witness yourself. Like you don't need me in the room, but I am there to hold space. I'm there to encourage you because there is resistance to starting. So people, when people do this with me, I used to sell kits individually, and I used to do individual sessions, and I still have a course out there, but it's not bad, but people want to have that that access to come together either separately or together. So like a live in-person workshop or a virtual workshop where people are working privately in their own space, but they can ask and answer questions in real time, and they put it on their calendar and they have a place to be with all of their materials ready. And then there's really no excuse not to do it. I mean, people can always find an excuse not to do it. So the people who are ready, and the people who aren't.
Yeah. Okay. So where can people find you if they're listening and they're like, this really resonates, I want to give it a try?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook under, so Instagram, I think I'm really bad with all of this stuff, but I think it's
Soul Portrait.
soulportrait.art/workshop is like a website page. Instagram, I think, is Soul Portrait, or my name, Devorah, and it might be
it's your name.
my whole name, Devorah.
Yeah, it's your name.
And then Facebook, I think, is Devorah Brinckerhoff. And then there's Soul Portrait. Yeah.
Okay.
soulportrait.art/workshop if people want to look into workshops. Or contact me directly. And I'm so easy to get in touch with if things resonate. I'm very, it's very new for me to put this out into the world. I haven't done this for very long at all. I've been working with people for years, but on a word of mouth in my studio, need to know basis. So this is much more out there. So thank you.
I love it. Yeah. So what do you call it? What do you call what you do?
Well, I call the process soul portraits, and it's all people burn them. Like I had one guy pay, like he commissioned me to make a soul portrait for him. And it was so lovely to, they give me, so when people want a commission, they give me access to everything. And that is like the biggest, most incredible honor and privilege for me. And then he wants to burn it, which I'm like, great. However you want to release this, wonderful. And it's all love. Like it's all love all of his material was love, but it was love that he couldn't receive. So it's not the love that he wants to call into his life. Yeah, it's really amazing.
That right there, what you just said. Oh my gosh.
So the process itself, to like succinctly say it, like you honor your past with the materials, you anchor your present by writing over it currently, like who you are now, you anchor in that present now, and then you paint or do washes or scribble or however you want with the intention, the energetic intention of who you want to step into. So it's past, present, future, creative process, really, that I happen to call soul portraits because it brought me closer to mine. That's what it is.
This is so cool.
We just have all this crap, right? With all this conditioning and lived experience. I'm like, you are not your lived experience. If I can stress enough to anyone and everyone who is listening or who this relates to or resonates with, you are not your lived experience. You are something so much bigger and so much more beautiful and so much, you've never lost your value. You are a shining, divine star, just a little buried under the confusion of life. Life is confusing.
Okay, guys, this is Devorah Brinckerhoff. She's amazing. She's incredible. Listening to her has been like, I honestly feel like we could go on and on and on. You said something a minute ago that I'm like, this could be a whole nother episode. But we'll end it here today, and I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes. I hope that people find this resonant. I do hope that it reaches the people that it's here to reach, and it reached me, so thank you. It touched my heart.
I'm so glad. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. It does feel like we could talk forever, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And
thank you so much. A huge joy to talk with you. I really appreciate it. It's so nice. I love what you're doing.
Thank you. Okay, if you need anything, email me, reach out. I'm here.
Same. Okay. Same. And I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. I want to help you I support you in helping those kids that I see you working with on social media. You've got such a big heart.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay. You too.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time in the Reclamation Room. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if this supported you, consider sharing it or leaving a review. You're not alone, and your reclamation is sacred.